Coffee and Headlines is brought to you by the generous support of our viewers and the following community partners: Best Court Cutting TV, Buforge Tax Preparation, Bravos Restaurant Bar, El Rey Lounge de Versalles, Joint Boutique Hotel and Co-work, Monzon Brewing Company, Puerto Vallarta Neurofeedback, Puerto Vallarta Owners Reps, and Siam Cocina Thai. Thank you for your support, and thank you for supporting our community partners.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Coffee and Headlines. This is our morning get-together live on Facebook, live on YouTube, where we get a chance to better connect with each other and better connect with Puerto Vallarta and our state, Jalisco, and our country, Mexico, as a community of English-speaking locals. Today is July 11th, and it's a pleasure to see you today. It is also Friday. The week is almost over. For some people, the weekend has begun. I still have to work tomorrow, but I look forward to that. But for the rest of you, it is Friday. I hope you have great plans for the weekend. I have good plans for this weekend, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Today, as usual, I have news items. And I also want to tell you a little bit about the wonderful get-together we had at the Joint Boutique Hotel and Co-work last night to talk about B. Steinway, the piano. And then between last night and this morning, I inadvertently managed to create a very interesting discussion, whatever, on an issue that is important and that has to do with culture and living here and expectations. So I'm always happy when this happens, particularly when the result of the conversation is an increased sense of cultural awareness. That's what we're here for. So let's get started with today's broadcast, and we'll take it from there. And we begin with this lofty statement: Marina Vallarta, the cleanest neighborhood in the city. Well, I'm not here to deny or to have an issue with it, but the fact is, local news source Contralinea praised the work the Marina Vallarta Residents Association has put forth to consolidate the colonia as the cleanest in the city. Now, I'm not sure that anybody's tracking this and whether it is the cleanest in the city or not, but it is definitely worth saying that when it comes to neighborhood associations getting involved and empowering residents to get things done for the betterment of the colonia, two colonias stand out in Puerto Vallarta. One of them obviously is Marina Vallarta, and the other one is Amapas. Both neighborhoods have strong, very tightly knit, very cohesive neighborhood associations with very clear goals. So if this is something that is important to you, just keep it in mind. Then moving right along, I learned this morning that a new citizens advisory board to preserve Puerto Vallarta's historic downtown area has been established. We heard about this coming in the past, but now it is official. This special council, Citizens Council, which was established by Mayor Munguia, is made up of prominent community members, including business representatives, architects, engineers, and city council members who will work together to fully restore El Centro and keep an eye on it, which I think is absolutely wonderful. In other news, in Bahía de Banderas, the municipality up north in the state of Nayarit, has a director of municipal planning, and this director, Luis Ricardo Huaracha Gutierrez, has revealed that the mapping of the bay in Bahia, of the bays or accesses to the ocean in Bahía de Banderas has been completed with 120 access points to the beach. Of these 120 access points, 45% are streets that lead directly to the beach throughout the municipality, while the rest are dirt roads and dirt paths. For this work, all access points were visited, identification materials were collected, and a digital map was developed, which will later be integrated into a website for the information of Bahía de Banderas residents and tourists. At present time, according to them, there is not a single beach in the municipality of Bahía de Banderas that is presently obstructed illegally. If some beaches are difficult to get to, it's simply because there are no roads in place, and it's not an issue of private entities preventing people from accessing the beach, which, as we know, is not lawful in Mexico. And yesterday, I mentioned this article about readers and people whose cash is in limbo because of the recent sanctions imposed or in the process of being imposed on CIBanco and Intercam here in Mexico. And I went back and looked for the article, and it was published by Mexico News Daily. It will be part of the show notes today. And I should mention that the article is behind a paywall, which means that you have to be subscribed to Mexico News Daily to be able to read it. But I also appreciate that this issue may be important enough for some to finance or to support Mexico News Daily with a subscription. And that's what we have for the first half. Let us take a quick look at the weather forecast just to see what we can expect this weekend. It's sunny. Bloop, bleep, bloop, bloop. That's what Snarky Weatherman has to say today. It is 29 degrees out there right now. Humidity is at 70%. And our weather forecast says that today we're going to have mostly clear skies in the morning with thunderstorms in the afternoon, but a low chance of rain, only 33%. And we're going to have a high temperature of 32 and a low temperature of 23. Then tomorrow, Saturday, mostly cloudy skies in the morning with thunderstorms in the afternoon, a high of 32 and a low of 24. And then on Sunday, mostly clear skies in the morning with rain in the afternoon, a chance of rain of 62%, a high of 32, and a low of 24. So it's summer, and it is summer weather, and it is what it is, and we might as well embrace it. Now, I want to give you an update. We've been talking about how Mexico City is celebrating the 700th anniversary of the Foundation of Mexico-Tenochtitlan, the moment in which nomad indigenous people in Mexico decided to start the city of Tenochtitlan, which was eventually turned into Mexico City. And what I learned this morning is that as part of the preparations, the government in the Mexico City has installed or is in the process of installing a giant pyramid and a variety of larger than life replicas of prehispanic monoliths, which I'm sure is going to be a sight to behold for anyone traveling or visiting Mexico City in the future. Of course, the official unveiling of these monuments will take place on July 26, which, according to the National Institute of History, is the closest date to the founding of Mexico Tenochtitlan. And that's what I have for today. Of course, we are now going to dive into this thing, which I published yesterday on Facebook and what prompted the publication. But before we do that, I want to quickly thank those of you who had the opportunity to join me at my music appreciation presentation yesterday. I thought it went well and people really enjoyed it. So I'm very grateful for it. And of course, all my events for the coming presentations are now published on Facebook. They're also published on all events in Puerto Vallarta and will be available on my website throughout this afternoon. And also, I have secured dates for the month of September at the Trent Boutique Hotel, and my big cultural music awareness presentation, Viva Mexico, which has everything to do with Mexican independence and how we celebrate it and what we celebrate and why, is going to be scheduled maybe 2 or 3 days before Independence Day. So if you want to party like a Mexican and understand what moves us, this is going to be the repeat and the improvement, because I'm going to revise it, of a great presentation that we had the pleasure of sharing last year and the year before. But now let's talk about this, because yesterday I became aware of two specific situations in which, um, cultural inconvenience became an issue. The first one happened to me. Uh, I was in the middle of my music appreciation presentation, and I went downstairs to go to the little boy's room, and the very nice man at the reception said to me, there's a person that tried to pay with US currency, which we don't accept. We don't accept US cash. And this person said that the person would handle it directly with you, as in with me. And I went upstairs, and indeed, a person that joined us as a member of the audience said to me, I tried to pay downstairs, but they didn't take my dollars. And I said, well, you know, maybe next time you come to a presentation, just pay for 2 tickets, or um, or just come by the hotel at some point and just pay for your ticket in Mexican cash. Of course, when people pay for tickets, they're not only benefiting me, but the hotel takes a cut of the payment. So as of this moment, the person that didn't pay not only owes me money, but the person owes the hotel money. It's not a lot of money. You know, I take 300, well, the tickets are 300 pesos. The hotel takes 30% of that. But the issue became the attempted payment with US dollars. Now, if this person had been a tourist, I would have understand it. I would have understood it. Mexico, we are a culture of friendly service, and as such, as as a people, we want to be of service. And then, if you factor in the fact that we live in a tourist destination, of course, the city is devoted to tourists, many of which come from north of the border or borders. So it is quite common for people to assume that it's okay to pay in cash with US currency. Uh, but it is still an inconvenience. So I was actually surprised when this situation happened involving a person who is a US resident, not a US tourist. I thought to myself, well, this person would know better, wouldn't they? So this is why we're talking about this today. This is just your nice little public service announcement, and I'm going to tell you why it is an issue. When you pay in cash, in US currency, in Puerto Vallarta, in a small business, the small business or the single person business has to make a special trip to the bank to cash that money and use that money. So you create an inconvenience. Now, when I posted this on Facebook this morning, and we'll get to the second story in a second, when I posted this, I very much appreciated how a lot of people understood the basic notion of why this is inconvenient. But then there were a couple of people that used hyperbole, and maybe I have a really strong aversion to hyperbole, particularly when it is used in sensitive or cultural context. I don't think it's a good idea. There was that person that said, well, most people don't mind it. And and you've watched me react to people that make generalized hyperbolic statements here at Coffee and Headlines. Whenever I hear somebody do it, my gut reaction is like, oh my God, you must know shitloads of stuff to be able to speak for all Mexicans. When you say, or most Mexicans, when you say, well, most people don't mind it. And yes, I do appreciate that some local workers might be in the process or in the habit of saving in US dollars, maybe for a trip or maybe for whatever reason. But are we, or are you, as a person that carries dollars in your wallet, are you giving the person the choice? Or are you simply handing the dollars out because somebody told it that it's okay because most people don't mind it? Factor into that the fact that most Mexicans, culturally speaking, we don't like to say no. Saying no is confrontational. Mexicans in general don't know that the word no is a complete sentence and it is a complete answer. So if you factor in the fact that a lot of Mexicans feel uncomfortable saying no, what makes you think that you're not creating an annoyance when you do that? You are. We all create annoyances, sometimes without noticing. When we get invited to a dinner party, a sit down dinner party, and we show up with an extra person unannounced, your host is probably going to love you and it's probably going to welcome your extra guest, but you may be creating an annoyance in the process of doing that. So do be mindful of this, and do be mindful of when was the last time sitting in your little business in Cincinnati or Milwaukee and somebody says, oh, I'm going to pay in pesos, because most Mexicans do. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly. And then there was a person that says, getting paid in dollars is better than not getting paid, or dollars are better than nothing. I'm sorry, but if I walked into a U.S. business and I said, well, here are my pesos, it's better than nothing, I don't think that's going to go very well. So be mindful of this. And if you're a tourist and you do it, how can I blame you when we open the door for you to do something like that? But think about this. You have a choice. You have the choice of doing something because that's what everybody else is doing, or you have the choice of not being a cultural nuisance. You tell me what you think. This is not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's simply about knowing that we have choices. And we can choose to be on the side of common courtesy. We can choose to be on the side of cultural sensitivity or not. And that's the end of that. Now, story number 2 is a lot more subtle, but perhaps even more fascinating. Yesterday, I heard of a friend of mine who went to get his Mexican driver's license, obviously here in Puerto Vallarta. And the process involves going through paperwork and being in a room and being in a place where there are other people attempting to do the same thing. Well, on the day in which my friend went, there was an American person who could not speak a word of Spanish and did not bring a Spanish-speaking helper to take care of her. The person, yes, it was a woman, but could have been a he. This person just decided, I'm going to go to the office and I'm going to ask questions in English because that's what I do. And of course, the situation was described to me as a bunch of Mexican workers trying to do what we do, be nice and explain things. But at the end of the day, if you're in Mexico and you go to a government building where the expected language is Spanish, no matter how much you smile at one another, if the person doesn't speak English and you don't speak Spanish, the situation is fucked. So what did my friend do? My friend attempted to be helpful. My bilingual friend attempted to be helpful and attempted to help this American person that could not speak Spanish. And in the process of doing so, my friend missed a very specific instruction from the instructor that made my friend fail his driving exam. My friend, for being kind and friendly and courteous to a person that was being a cultural inconvenience, failed his driver's license test while trying to help a person that could not speak Spanish, that would have been better off bringing his or her own Spanish translator. So when you go out around the city, assuming that because you don't speak Spanish, somebody's going to bail you out wherever you're going, chances are that you will be bailed out because that's who we are and that's what we do. But you're still going to be a cultural inconvenience. So think about that. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. And let's take a look at your comments. Oh, and then there were those of you that said, well, in some countries in South America, you can bring dollars. And, that's fine if dollars are your currency. My currency is pesos. So if I go to Panama or whatever countries that accept dollars freely, I'm still going to have to convert my pesos into the local currency, because the last thing I would want to do is to become a cultural inconvenience somewhere else. Lots of good mornings as usual. Thank you very much for that. Oh no, we had an ice joke in my presentation yesterday. That's all I'm going to say about that. Any updates on the pier in Mismaloya, says Chris. Chris, I have not seen anything published about the Mismaloya pier lately. So, because I haven't been there in some time, I don't know if construction got started when our mayor said it would be. Because the last that happened, if I recall, our mayor announced it, and then it was announced that the governor was going to be there to start the construction process, at least in a ceremony. And then our governor had to change plans. Our mayor still went the following day to have a look at the site, but I don't have an update that has been published. So if anybody lives in Mismaloya and has any updates on this, we would greatly appreciate it. And next time I'm heading into the South Shore in someone's vehicle, I'll ask to stop quickly at the pier to see if it looks like it has changed. Any news on the pier in Cinco de Diciembre? Same answer. I have not seen anything published, and I have not walked down Cinco de Diciembre in the last 2 or 3 weeks to know or to see with my own eyes whether something has been started or not. But these are important things, and I'll be so very happy to keep an eye on them and report them as soon as I find out any updates. I think I'm wearing Saskatchewan Rough Rider green. Ooh, I love it. I love it. Well, I didn't know about this tradition, Chris, but I'm happy that I'm being culturally sensitive without even knowing it. I love it. Let's see. Question Queen. It was absolutely fun. I always have fun at my presentations because I always learn something new. My challenge is to wrap the presentations around compelling stories. And yesterday we got lucky because there were some really fascinating stories to be shared. From the story behind how the most the best-selling solo piano album, not only is it heavenly, but it almost didn't happen because of a comedy of errors. We talked about a certain composer that writes jazz pieces for piano like nobody else does, but he never left the Soviet Union. So he was never exposed to jazz. So how was this possible? There were great stories to be shared yesterday, and we love those. Let's see what else we have. I always travel with US cash. I have learned to always carry pesos now for the very reason you named regarding tipping. Yeah. And again, the situation of the payment last night, it's a small amount. The person involved in the situation could have easily walked home or go to a teller and exchange some money. But this person, for better or worse, assumed that it would be okay with me to not pay. And that is an assumption that sometimes we have the luxury to make and sometimes we don't. God knows if I'm going to an event, I make sure that I have the money that I need to pay for the event, and that's just me. John says, great presentation yesterday. Thank you very much. It was great to see you guys, and it was a lot of fun. Sorry, but many Americans expect their money to be accepted everywhere. In the U.S., they will not accept pesos or Canadian money anywhere. Well, Mary, again, I'm not going to agree or disagree with your statement. All I'm going to say is that in Puerto Vallarta, when paying with U.S. currency at a small business or tipping a waiter or throwing a US dollar bill in somebody's crotch at the table dance, you may be doing that person a favor because they're trying to save in US currency, or you may be a cultural inconvenience. Just putting that awareness out there. Let's see what else we have. Another issue with paying with the dollar is that is changing the value all the time and you might lose money. Yes, that's definitely another issue. I could have accepted the payment in dollars last night, but I figured, and I'm not even counting the subtle differences with the rate exchange. Do I want to make an extra trip to the bank in the summer in this heat to change a dollar bill just because a person paid me or thought it would be okay to pay me with US dollars? Definitely not. Let's see what else. Not even Cincinnati. You can't pay with pesos in San Diego. Yeah, somebody commented, well, people do it on the at the border. And I'm like, well, this is not the border. Let's see what else. Thank you, Paco, for for talking about this money issue. Again, my goal here, Margaret, thank you for appreciating the conversation, is not to shame anyone. It's just to raise awareness. It's also not to have everybody completely agree or disagree with me. All I'm saying is you can choose to be aware or choose not to. Let's see. We try to use our Spanish, but when it fails, we resort to Google Translate. Well, Barbara, I have to say, I'm so glad that so many of you don't speak Spanish, because I would be out of business if all of you could speak Spanish. I really would. All I'm saying is, rely on Google Translate. Bring a friend. Whenever we talk here at Coffee and Headlines about visiting other cities in Mexico, I always say, Puerto Vallarta pampers you funny and silly and shamelessly and creates this artificial environment where you think, or you might think, that the rest of Mexico you can go around speaking English without saying buenos dias or hola or buenas tardes, and you can pay with US cash like it's anybody's business. It's not that way. So, there you go. That's a long one. There's a very true saying, no good deed goes unpunished. I have learned this so many times, and we are all ambassadors from our various countries, and we should behave as courteously and diplomatically And respectfully, as such, I'm so tired and distressed at people with attitudes of entitlement. Well, Vivian, I totally appreciate your comment. I have to say, Vivian, that one of the wonderful things about living in Puerto Vallarta is that the sandbox is huge. And there's enough room for everybody to play and everybody to find our tribe. And it sounds like your tribe and my tribe would probably have a lot of things in common. And if there are people in the audience thinking, well, really, Paco, we've been doing this for years, that's great too. And it's great that you have your own space. Um, Dollars are a big pain for all businesses. It's Mexico and we use pesos. That's respect. Somebody wrote something along the lines of, well, shop at Walmart because that's where they accept dollars, or shop at Costco. Well, this is true. But at the end of the day, there's a person in the payroll that has to make that special trip to the bank to take care of the cultural inconvenience. So it's all food for thought. And with that, thank you very much for responding to an issue that I think is culturally important to keep in mind when experiencing Puerto Vallarta, when experiencing Mexico. All we try to do here at Coffee and Headlines is to create awareness, to create connections, and it's entirely up to us how we wish to, as somebody just pointed, how we wish to be ambassadors of the people that we represent when we are in a foreign land. I have a hangover because I drank a lot of wine last night. I'm not embarrassed to say. So I'm glad that my day is winding down early today. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow morning with more coffee, more headlines, and more stories. Have a good day.